So thanks you all for joining us. We are really excited to kick off this series, even though we have just a few folks starting to join. We're really looking forward to, over the next 2 months, 3 months or so, to start building a little bit of a relationship with all of you and amongst each other to support gardening and home cooking, both within the early childhood sites that you all are connected to and also in families' homes. So each session, we are featuring different organizations working within the kind of garden and urban agriculture community in Boulder County. We're really excited today to have EcoCycle be presenting on composting. And we'll share towards the end, we'll share the full lineup of sessions that are coming. Those of you who are joining, we'd love for you to continue to share out and promote the resources to other families, to just let folks know that this is here and available. And we are going to be increasing and expanding the Spanish language accessibility with live interpretations and translations as well for future sessions. So hopefully that will help to expand our audience and, again, just encourage more community in the garden space. So without further ado, Alicia, would you like to introduce yourself, and we can do introductions, maybe of all of the folks on the call after you've offered and shared a little bit of your presentation.
Sure. So hi everyone, my name is Alicia Bouyon and I work at EcoCycle, and I've been there about 15 years now, hard to believe. And so I am the program registrar and project administrator for our education department. And so we do a lot of education to the public school students in Boulder County. So yeah, it's a fun place to be.
And I can share and add too that this entire series is really a great partnership between Boulder County Farm to Early Childhood Education, and Big Green. So we've been sponsored by the Sprouts Foundation and are really excited to provide this series of garden chats, this garden club, as well as the grow bag distributions that are going to be happening. And we have some updates about those as well that we'll be sharing a little bit later on in the call as well. We'll be postponing the Saturdays and adding in Wednesday as well, just again, as we were talking about the weather earlier, make space for some snow to happen this weekend before we start distributing all of the garden materials. Laura or Stephanie, our colleagues from Big Green and Boulder Early Childhood, would either of you like to introduce yourselves or share anything about the program?
Sure, I can go. I'm Stephanie Dillingham. I work for Boulder County Public Health, the Farm to ECE program, and I think I've probably met you, Carla, and I'm not sure who else we have on the call, but yeah, we're super excited about this. And as Sam said, please feel free to share with your coworkers or parents and families. We're excited about this new learning series. So. And I will let Laura introduce herself.
Great, thanks, Stephanie. Hi all, I'm Laura Thompson. I'm the Director of Strategic Alliances at Big Green. So I work closely with Sam on our programs team at Big Green, and just really excited to be building all of these partnerships with everyone and being able to hold this series. So thanks for being here.
Excellent, thanks so much. Carla, and I don't know, our other guests, if you all would like to unmute and introduce yourselves, we can. I'd really love for this to cultivate a space that's really open and informal, and invite you all to participate freely. You can also feel free to utilize the chat if it's easier for you as well.
Yes, so my name is Carla Casas, and I am the Health, Safety, and Nutrition Coordinator for Boulder County Head Start. And I was actually previously a teacher within the Head Start program, and it's my first year as the coordinator. And my kitty wants to say hi too. Yes. And we love Farm to ECE. So when this opportunity with Big Green came up, I was like, yes, tell me more.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We welcome you and your cat. That's wonderful. And we can just pause for a minute, but feel free to introduce yourself, or you can just stay a silent listener as well, no pressure. And Alicia, if you want to start working your way into your presentation, that gives us a buffer to work through the transition. Thanks, everybody.
All right. So I'll start sharing. All right, can everybody see that first page?
Yeah, sure can.
All right. Let me just adjust one more thing. Okay. Okay, so again, I work at EcoCycle, and if you don't know about EcoCycle, it's a nonprofit in Boulder County. We run the recycling center on 63rd and Arapahoe. And we also do other zero waste support services like hauling compost and recycling from businesses and schools. We have the Center for Hard to Recycle Materials called the Charm over on 64 Arapahoe. It's housed with Resource Central, if anyone's ever been there. And like I mentioned earlier, we also provide environmental education to the public schools in Boulder County. And there's a few private preschools that we've been working with too through the Farm to ECE program as well. So if anybody has students in Boulder County, there's a good chance we've visited with them. Okay, so what I'm going to do today is talk about composting. I'm not sure what the scope of knowledge on the subject is for everybody who's watching, so I'm just going to kind of go over the basics and then supply some resources for more investigation later if you're interested, and then answer any questions that anybody might have during or after. So it's an amazing process if you don't know already, and it's super beneficial to anyone who wants to grow plants, which is, I think, everybody here. So before that, I get into like compost ins and outs. I kind of wanted to see what everybody's thoughts on gardening, just general thoughts. Like, why do you garden? If you're starting it this year for the first time, what's getting you into it? Your goals, your motivation, things like that. And if you've been doing it for years, what keeps you in it? I know for myself, I've got lots of reasons. But the one I wanted to mention here was, for me, one of the bigger reasons is that it allows me to connect to the natural world in a different way. So I'm used to hiking and camping a lot, and then I had kids and things slowed down in that department. And so I can't get out as much as I want to, but I can still connect with plants and nature near home, right? So I can learn about them, I can touch them, feel them, examine them, cultivate them, and it just builds a connection and a familiarity with nature. So I just was curious, like, you know, what does everybody else think about gardening? Why do you do it? What does it bring? How does it serve you? So I can stop sharing if anyone wants to pop in.
I mean, I could go. I really enjoy gardening for the same reason that you said, Alicia, but also I'm a dietitian, so the idea of growing my own fruits and vegetables is awesome to me, and I love learning about all the ins and outs of them, but also like that includes growing them. So that's what makes it really interesting to me. And I have little kids and they love it too. So it's awesome all around for us.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. It allows you to teach children how to care for living things too, you know, like get them to connect as well. And fresh air. And for some people it's meditative, right? Like just to kind of go through the motions of certain tasks.
my kids this year, it's the first time I've let them like have a section of the garden, and they planted it themselves. So they're really excited about it, but they were feeling stressed about the weather when I told them it was going to snow. So.
Right. Yeah. I think some other reasons too are just that pride in growing your own food. Certain things you don't have to go to the store to get anymore, or even the market. Like you can be proud that you grew it, and saves you money, like time, all the things. If it's a veggie garden, I should say. Anybody else want to?
I will share two things. So my first experience with EcoCycle was in the classroom. We did composting worms. I think it was a virtual lesson 2 years ago, and it was really fun. And we even had like a worm farm. Personally, like my parents garden, but since I moved out, like I tried to, and it's just not been successful. So I'm here for tips. I'm here to learn some more. And also grab onto that knowledge and share it back with teachers or families who are like, wow, these cucumbers are amazing. What'd you do? And be able to be a resource for them. Yeah.
That's awesome, Carla. I can share too. I started growing food like, I don't know, almost 20 years ago now. I've been growing food for a really long time. But I did it to grow food because I have always loved eating and cooking and sharing food with my loved ones, and just knowing that I could grow food that was so much better, so much fresher, with varieties from all over the world that would be really difficult to find or really expensive. That was my initial motivation for gardening and kind of what drew me in. But since I've been growing, to me, that connectivity, both to the natural world, really having a relationship with the plants, with the soil, with the insects, with the birds, with the squirrels, even if with some of those beings, my relationship is more difficult than others. Still, those relationships have really opened up my eyes in my life, to just a way of being that is so much more deeply connected to the patterns of nature. And I'm continuing to learn and try to walk down that path and help others to be able to have those connections as well. And then also to people, like to get to meet and talk to other gardeners and learn from them and share with them and just be a part of that community of people who are doing this work together in the same kind of spirit has really been such a wonderful gift, and that the gardens offer that I didn't go into the work knowing.
That's great. Anybody else?
I can share. I grew up helping my dad garden, but for many years I didn't have my own gardening space because I lived in city apartments with not much access to being able to do that. So I would volunteer and help out on urban farms and different things like that, but I didn't really have my own space. And then I moved here to Boulder a couple of years ago, and I've had a garden bed that has been a joy to learn all about, and learning about amending my soil and growing different types of things. So that's been fun. I've never done my own composting, but Boulder does municipal composting, so I do compost things, but I don't reap the personal benefits of my own, worm bin or something like that. But I do give back to my compost to the municipal composting. So I feel lucky to have that resource.
It's an awesome resource.
Yeah.
Yeah. I try to tell the kids, do you know how lucky you guys are to be able to have
crazy. I mean, in our, we just moved, but in our apartment building that we were in before, we were like the only ones that composted. And it was really because I didn't see anyone else's compost in the bin. And I was really confused why they were just putting it in the trash. But alas.
Yes, I know. There's still a lot of work to do to
Yes.
get more folks on board. So
Yes.
cool. Well, I think there's lots of reasons why we garden, and I think one of the main ones that might be universal is that a lot of us want to, successfully nurture plant growth so that it produces a good harvest, or at least something beautiful to look at, or both, right? And so if we're gonna do that, if we want that, then we gotta feed them, right? We gotta feed them good stuff. So am I still? I'm not. I need to.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Reshare. Wait a second. Sorry. There we go. Try that again. Okay. All right, now do you see it?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so so we want to feed the plants that we want to grow well, right? So we're going to give them compost. And so what is compost? It's decayed organic material that's used as a plant fertilizer. And I like to call it plant food, because I mean, that's pretty much what it is. And organic material in this case means anything that is or was alive. So leaves, even paper, right? Like apples, meat, like anything that is or was alive is organic material. So we're not talking about the animal part right here for composting. We're talking about recycling old plants into new plants. Even though animals are organic matter, and that does happen in nature, we're going to keep it out of the compost, the home composting, and I'll tell you why later. I also like to tell the kids that everything we eat is made from stuff that used to be in the soil somewhere, right? So our bodies are growing from the foods that we eat, and the foods that we eat come from the soil. So we, in turn, come from the soil. So we really are from the earth. Now, why is composting important? Well, when it's mixed with soil, it provides the nutrients that they need to grow. It helps them grow better. I like to think of dirt, so inorganic materials, sand, clay, pebbles, things like that, that doesn't have any humus in it. That's like junk food. It's got a little bit of nutrients, but it's not going to get you very far, right? Versus compost, which is more like a healthy, well-balanced meal. It's got the proteins, the carbs, the fats. It's got everything we need to grow healthier. So you want to give healthy food to your plants, not junk food, right? One of the other ways that composting is important to me and many others is that it helps the environment. So when we take our organic materials that we don't need or want anymore and we compost them as opposed to put them in the trash can, then they stay out of the landfill. And when organics go to a landfill, they get buried, they get no oxygen. So the anaerobic bacteria, which doesn't need oxygen, will slowly decompose it. And their byproduct is methane gas, which, as some of you know, is a greenhouse gas and it's contributing to climate change. So, so the more we compost and divert our organics out of the waste, out of the landfill stream, the more we're keeping the methane out of the air. So I feel like that's, worth it, if nothing else. And it's a super amazing resource that we can use to feed our plants. To me, it's a no-brainer, but so how is it made? It's a natural process. It's the nutrient cycle, right? It's taking old plants, turning them into new plants. This happens in nature everywhere. But composting is a more concentrated system where it's contained. So you need four main things. You need the organic feedstock. So that's the unwanted plant material. You need the decomposers, which are the little critters that do the big work. And then you need the things that they need to survive besides food. So that's water and oxygen. And so just like a cake, you need the right ingredients, you need the right proportions of those ingredients, and you need some time and attention. Now, that organic feedstock is broken into two different categories, greens and browns. And so greens are nitrogen-rich feedstock. So it's got, so it's mostly like food scraps, fresh grass clippings, things like that. They have some moisture in them. They were recently alive. So that banana peel, you know, that banana was on a tree at least a week or two ago, right? So recent. The browns, those are organic materials that have a lot of carbon in them. They are often dry or dead, you know, so like dried leaves, sticks, twigs, paper products like tissues, napkins, paper towels. Those things can't be recycled, those paper products, but they can be composted. So that's a great redirect for those items. And then of course the water and the air, so that the decomposers can survive while they're doing this work by eating all the stuff we're giving them. Now, the decomposers, who are they? Well, there's lots and lots of them. I'll start with the tiniest ones. The microscopic ones, the bacteria, the mold, the fungus, well, they start microscopic, right? And then as they grow, you can start to see them, but they're everywhere and not great in the fridge, but awesome in the compost bin. So they are the non-animal decomposers that come along first. And then you've got some of the animal decomposers that I've listed and shown here are actually macroinvertebrates. And so they are macro, meaning big enough that you can see them. I'm sure you're familiar with some or all of these critters here. There are some microscopic animal decomposers like protozoa, nematodes, things like that, but I didn't put pictures because you're not going to see those when you go dig in the garden. So, and then there's also predatory macroinvertebrates. So these are like centipedes and ground beetles that will come and feed on these guys. And then there's birds and mammals. So those fill out the food webs of the soil. So it's a mini ecosystem in there. It's really cool. I also like to tell the kids if it wasn't for decomposers, we wouldn't be here, right? So if everything that ever lived died and stayed exactly where it was, nothing ever happened to it, we wouldn't be here because there'd be no nutrients being recycled, right? The decomposers eat the dead stuff and feed the new plants feed the new animals, including us. So it's kind of another really cool connection. Like we owe a lot of gratitude to these little critters that do this work all the time. All right, so how do we do it? How do we make compost? There's lots of different options based on lots of different factors. How much space, how much time, how much energy, how much resources do you want to put into a project like this? So I'm going to start with backyard composting. You can do this in a couple different ways. So if you look at the top left and the bottom right, those are holding units that are pre-made. You can purchase them at a garden center or hardware store, something like that. They can be close to $100 or more, but they are, contained. And the bottom right one is a tumbler, so it has like a crank and it can turn it, and that'll get air circulating through, and that's what you want. So it kind of is a little bit less messy and less tools required. You can go the DIY route. In the bottom left, you'll see 4 pallets that were brought together, or you can use old lumber. You can find these things, at Resource, actually. Anyone familiar with Resource in Boulder? It's all reused building supplies. You can get pallets there. You can do a cylinder of chicken wire to make a holding unit, pretty cheap. So there's lots of different ways to do that. And one of the links I have, actually a couple of them show options and step-by-step instructions on how to do these things. And then the most simplest way is just to make a pile. Find a spot in your yard that is shaded and close-ish to where your hose can reach, and designate that your compost pile site. You just dump it. And so those are some yard options. And if you don't have the space to do something like that, the other option is the worm bin. And these are really great because you can have a bigger indoor space or a bigger outdoor space and still choose to do this, right? Or if you are an apartment, condo, or you just don't want to put it in your outdoor space, you can do the worm bin. And so just like the holding units, you can buy one pre-made, again, 80 to 100 or more based on the model you want. Or you can do the DIY version, which is to get a plastic Rubbermaid tub like this and make it yourself. I don't recommend doing the pile method for the worm bins because that's going to be messy. I'm just joking. There's no such thing that I know of. But for the worms, they're a little bit more sensitive than the outdoor critters. They only want plant material, just like the backyard bin. But you also don't want to put oil. So like salad dressing, if you didn't finish a salad and it's dressing on it, don't put the salad dressing on the lettuce in the worm bin. You never want to put anything with plastic, glass, or metal in either version, either bin. But for the worms in particular too, you don't want to go easy on like acidic things like citrus peels, spicy things like jalapeno, even onions. They can kind of get upset with you for feeding them that. And so the next slide I'm going to show, if you wanted to embark on this, it doesn't take very many supplies, and they're fairly easy to come by. You need, like I said, the plastic bin. And so this one looks like it's a 10-gallon bin. You can get bigger ones, but they don't need much. They like to only hang out in like 8 inches of, like the top 8 inches of whatever you're going to put in there. So it doesn't have to be deep. A power drill to drill some holes for aeration so they can breathe. And then shredded paper of some kind, whether you have it from your own shredder. Make sure there's no plastic. Like if you shredded any envelopes with plastic windows in it, make sure those are out, or shred a new batch knowing that there's none of that in there. Or you can get like newspaper or the inserts or flyers that you get in the mail, the ads, not the shiny glossy ones, but the newsprint ones. And you tear them into strips about 1 inch long, and kids love doing this. It's a great project for kids to do. And then you fluff it all up and you put it in the bin. And then you need to so you've got the air covered, right? You got the holes. So you would drill a few rows of holes along the lid, and then a row or two along the top, maybe 1/4 to 1/3 of the bottom. And again, there's a lot of different ways to do this. I think Sam's going to put in the chat some links to worm bin specifics, and one of them shows you how step by step on how to do one version of a worm bin. So once you've got it drilled and you've got your paper in, you need to get the paper wet. So they need water, right? So you can dump water, or you can spray with a water bottle, and you turn it and you mix it until your paper feels like the dampness of a wrung out sponge. And that's when you know that it's safe for the worms, because if it's too wet, they're not going to like it. If it's too dry, they're not going to survive. They need moisture. And like I said, the kids love tearing anything. So great project for them. And then that size, a 10-gallon would hold about 1 pound of worms. So if you needed more than that, then you might do a second bin. Sam, did you want to show your bin real quick so that they can see what it looks like?
Yeah, I sure can. So I have my bin here. I usually keep this like in my laundry room, like kind of behind my washer and dryer. So it's out of the way. And you can see it's just like a 10-gallon Tupperware Rubbermaid tote. And here's once it's going, you don't need to add water because the food you add has water. So this doesn't have water in it. I haven't added water, but you can see everything is really moist, and you can see there's my food scraps, and let's see if there's probably, I mean, there's thousands of worms in here, but they're all down eating. Yeah. My youngest daughter, there's a little worm. My youngest daughter's 7, and whenever I have this out, she's always like, "Can I hold a worm? Can I hold a worm?" It's just like, yeah, dig in there. It's really, it is really fun. It's fun for me, but it's definitely also fun for the kids, both in a classroom setting and in a home environment. There's a lot of jobs you can give to your kids to help do it, and many times these are like the more fun jobs, better than like doing the dishes or cleaning your room.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty simple.
Yeah, you can tell how damp it was kind of just by looking at that. And I think for me, when I had one, I never had to, like when you build it, you have to get the water in there, but you often don't have to add water to a worm bin because of like Sam said, the foods that you're putting in there. Like if you have an apple core, there's water in there, and what you do have to watch out for, if there's too much water, then they're not going to like that either. So then you have to add more bedding to kind of absorb it and get it back to balanced. So yeah, that's that fun with worms. Okay, so I'm going to share again. And you put the links in the chat.
Yeah, I dropped the spruce link for the instructions and also the Uncle Jim's Worm Farm link that you had shared.
Yeah, so that's the last part, right? So once you get the bin with the holes and the paper and the water, you need to actually get worms. You can't just go harvest from your yard because those are earthworms. They need deeper soil. They need colder temperatures. You want red wigglers, red worms, composting worms, lots of names for the same creature. They are native to Asia. They like warmer temperatures. They eat faster, and that's what you want in your bin. Don't get bait worms, none of that. You want the good ones. And so Uncle Jim's Worm Farm is one that you can order online. They ship it to your house. You have to make sure you're there, or else they won't leave it because it's a live animal, right? Or Boulder County, I don't know what the current status is, but there's a few spots in the county that was selling worms as well. One of them was the flower bin in Longmont. I don't know if they still are. Their website didn't indicate that they do. There's also another guy like in the Fort Collins area, maybe not so much Boulder County, John Anderson. I don't know how to track this guy down, but I know that he's been listed several places as the worm man. So it might take some digging to find a local spot, but they're out there. You can find them. So yeah, they can go in lots of places. They just have to stay warm. And if you want them outdoors in the summer, they can go outdoors in summer. They just can't be in the sun and they can't get too hot. So like 75, 80 is max for what they can handle. So I put together this side by side. If anybody's trying to decide which way should I go, I want to do something, but I don't know what's the best for my family and our situation and our living situation. So so side by side, I wanted to talk about maintenance, the space they required, the amount of feedstock, and then the harvest. So for backyard composting, there's more maintenance. You have to water it regularly, especially in Colorado. It's so dry. You might have to water it a couple times a week based on where it's located, how much sun and how dry it's been. And you have to turn it. So you have to turn it with a pitchfork, which means mixing it, right? You have to do that at least once a week to really get everything so that all the decomposers can get to all of it. And I forgot to mention this earlier, this goes for worm bin or outdoor. You want to make sure that the pieces are small. So if you have food scraps, to like chop them up. Leaves you don't have to chop up, but like if you put branches in, break them smaller, just so that the smaller they are, the more surface area they have, the faster they're going to break down. So yeah, backyard composting, a little bit more maintenance versus the worm bin. It's pretty low maintenance. Once you get that bin built, they do all the work. When you feed them, I've seen some spots say just dump it on the top. I never did that. I would make a little hole, put it in, cover it up so that it's nice and dark and ready for them, because they don't like light. They feel vulnerable, right? Like they're a worm. If there's light, then they know they can be seen, so they like to be down. And so I like to bury it, put it where they are, and then that way, if there's fruit flies or anything like that, they're not gonna be on the surface. They'll be kind of buried, which hopefully is not the case for you. And you don't have to turn it, because that's what they do. As far as outdoor or space required, backyard composting, you need a larger outdoor space. So like I said before, shaded corner of the yard, but you're gonna have at some point like a 3x3 pile. And so that's going to take up more space than a worm bin would, versus, the indoor space required for a worm bin is the size of the worm bin itself, right? So a spot under the sink, in the cabinet, the laundry room. I like that idea behind the washer and dryer. It might keep them a little bit warmer, right? Based on what's going on in the dryer and washer. It can go in a garage, it can go in a balcony if you have an apartment, things like that. But that would be for summer only. You have to bring them in when it gets cooler. Okay, so for feedstock, for backyard composting, this works well if you've got a larger yard and you have a lot of yard waste or garden scraps. You have like a larger volume going in. If you had a worm bin, but you had all this yard and garden scrap, it would overwhelm the worm bin. So that wouldn't be a good fit. But if you don't, and you've got like just indoor plants or just your food scraps that you want to compost, then a worm bin might be the better option. Also, like I said before, non-recyclable papers are great for worm bins or backyard compost. And then for the harvest, you're gonna get more harvest from a backyard compost than you would from a worm bin. So if you've got a lot of plants outside and you want a lot of free compost, that might be a better fit too, versus if you don't have a lot of plants outside and you're just doing a potted garden or house plants, then a worm bin would be able to give you what you need for that. Does anybody have any experience with either method and want to share some of their tips that they've learned from composting with or without worms?
I do a lot of composting, and you mentioned fruit flies as being like a thing that like hopefully doesn't happen, but I feel like in the time of compost cycle with a worm bin, like from starting it to when you're harvesting it, you're gonna get fruit flies at some point. Mm-hmm. And so I just, once I learned that you could just put a little vinegar, a little apple cider vinegar with a drop of dish soap in it and put it next to the worm bin, all of the fruit flies go in there and they don't have a party in your house. Yeah. Little tips like that like if you don't know about that, the fruit flies are going to drive you crazy.
Right. And then you'll stop doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think just something that like whether you're inside or outside, whatever the like challenge you have, probably somebody who's done it has had that challenge before and has figured it out. So I was talking before about why I love gardening is because you connect with people, like a group like this, I can come up and say like, hey y'all, I had like rats in my compost pile last weekend. Like, what do I do? Mm-hmm. And probably somebody else has also had rats in their compost and, can give you some tips on, what they've done to solve it. So you're not overwhelmed and feeling like you've, made a huge mistake. Again, we're starting to interact with the natural world and it's not predictable and clean. It's wild and messy, and inviting that into our homes can sometimes feel like a problem. And so it usually has simple solutions. It's just we have to ask the right people.
Right. Yeah. one of the things I've also heard about fruit flies in particular is that you can either freeze or microwave the food before you put it out, and that will kill the eggs, right? So fruit flies have laid their eggs in the peels of the fruit, and that's how they get started. So they're already there. You just gotta make sure they don't survive. So that's one of the things I've learned too. But the fruit fly trap is another option. Yeah. Oops. Okay, so then after about 3 months or so, the compost is ready to harvest. And so that for a worm bin or backyard, and you know that it's ready when it's dark and crumbly and it doesn't look like what went in, right? It's very different. And so you can sift it through a compost sifter that you can buy, or you can just get a 1/4-inch grid hardware fabric and you put the compost on and shake it, and anything that falls through, that's your finished compost. And anything that doesn't fall through goes back in the bin to continue its process. And so you can add, a 1/4-inch to 1-inch layer at the base of your garden plants, or you can mix it with potting soil for your indoor plants or potted plants too, outdoor plants. So yeah, feed your gardens, feed your house plants, make them happy, help the environment while you're doing it. And then with the kids, all these things that we've been talking about are great to incorporate their help with. So build and maintain the worm bin or the holding unit, get them involved with that, have them apply and mix the compost into the soil in the gardens and the pots. Talk about how compost is like food for the plants, and how we're all connected to the plants and the soil for as long as we've been in existence, right? And then, search for those decomposers in the garden when you're out there. And when you find one, say thank you. Thank you for doing what you do. And thank you for doing what you do. Like more gardening is all good. So keep going too fast through here. So yeah, here's my contact information. I'm happy to answer the questions now or later if you want to contact me. And yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. And if you want to, Alicia, and if you want to add your contact information in the chat too, so folks can reach out if they like, that would be great.
Sure.
That was awesome. Before we move on, I do have a recipe I want to share with everybody, and we have some updates about kind of the schedule for the garden pickup, the Little Green Gardens pickup that we're doing. I want to definitely get to that before the end of the session, but we do have a little time. The recipe will go quickly. Just wanted to open it up for any conversation or questions or shared experiences about home composting, whether it's backyard or worm bin, or any questions you all might have. Carla, I heard you mention that you did some maybe classroom composting with EcoCycle in the past. Any thoughts that we might want to share before we dive into the next?
Yeah, so similar to what Laura shared, so we compost in every classroom, the kitchen compost, and we teach the kids, what's the blue bin, what's the green bin, what's trash. And so it was fun for them to learn what composting was, because when they're cleaning up their plates after lunch, they just put it in the green bin. But with the EcoCycle composting lesson, the kids were able to see, oh, the worms eat this, I'm feeding the worms. And it was really cute. We didn't make our own worm garden. It was like bought off Amazon, and it was like clear glass, kind of similar to an ant farm, where they were watching. You can put something in there and the worms would eat it. So the kids were taking a little magnifying glass and watching the worms, do their thing. And I like that it was glass so that they could see it more so than like if we were to make it our own. It was a lot of kind of messy type of work when you're feeding the worms and you're like, oh, it's like moist and damp. and type of thing. So the teachers were like, okay, wash your hands. But it was a really fun experience. And like I said, I would like for all the classrooms in Head Start to have some sort of, because we compost all the time, to have that connection to the earth and like the whole cycle, and like now the worm's eating what you didn't eat type of circle.
Awesome. Yeah, it really is so cool. And you're right, it is messy. Like there's definitely some mess involved. Although in the early childhood classroom, I feel like there's always mess. Right. So washing hands is just right. It's how many times today did we wash our hands? Like, all day. Awesome. Well, if anybody else has anything to share, definitely speak up. Otherwise, I am going to slowly make my way over to my presentation too and have a fun recipe to share with you. Okay, can you all see my pancakes recipe? All right, I am going to make it full screen. And then I'm just going to scroll down because I have the English version down below for us. Oh, sorry, it's taking so long. Anyway, while it's loading, perfect. So this is a recipe that I learned from Amy Halloran. You can find her on Instagram with the handle @FlourAmbassador. She is an author and a local grains and whole grains champion, an amazing baker, and just a wealth of knowledge of cooking with and using and supporting a local grain economy. She's on the East Coast, but I know her through kind of the work that we're doing in the Midwest connected to local whole grain production and eating, and is really well connected to that community of people around the country. So shout out to Amy Halloran. If y'all are on Instagram, I encourage following her to learn more about grains. Anyway, this recipe, I love this recipe for so many reasons. It's really versatile. I have here that it's a cup of stone ground cornmeal, but you can do half a cup of cornmeal and half a cup of whole wheat. You can include rye flour, you can include buckwheat flour. Whatever grains you have around are great in the pancake recipe. And it's an amazing way to include more whole grains in our kids' diets in ways that and also like sneaking more veggies into their diets too, in ways that is really fun. And also this is a great recipe for our kids to help cook in the kitchen with too. So it's a quarter cup of cornmeal, corn flour, a cup of cornmeal or corn flour. And again, it can be at whatever whole grain flour you like. A teaspoon of baking powder, a quarter teaspoon of baking soda, and a half teaspoon of salt for the dry ingredients. The wet ingredients are an egg, a quarter cup of yogurt, and then depending on the grains you use and how dry it is, somewhere between a half and 2/3 of a cup of milk or a milk alternative. I actually really like oat milk in this recipe. And it also keeps it like really grain centered. And then just a little bit of butter that you're gonna need for the griddle. And then that's for the batter itself. And then on the side, whatever thin strips of veggies and leaves that you have available from the garden. We're going to be talking about grow bags a lot in this chat for the rest of this series. All of these, well, not all, maybe not cabbage, but so many of these things are really great and easy to grow in containers. And this is just one of those recipes that you happen to have some stuff in the garden and you don't have enough for a huge recipe. That's okay. You can use like a little bit here, a little bit there to add in and make these pancakes really special. So things I've used in the past are carrots, zucchini, turnips, and beets. even radishes cut really thin in little strips, kind of julienne. Leaves from the garden, so celery leaves, usually we toss those out in compost, but they taste great. They have a really nice celery flavor, and this is a recipe they work really well in. Cabbage or kale leaves, arugula, dandelion. It's this time of year when dandelions are everywhere. If you have a place where you can harvest dandelions where they're clean and are growing in safe soil and away from animals that might be doing their business on them, you can eat the dandelions, and this is another, they're really bitter if you are not an eater of dandelions, but this is a great recipe where some of that bitterness is not as forward in their flavor profile, and they're so nutritious for us. And then herbs, cilantro, chives, thyme, oregano, it doesn't matter, any herbs. I've sliced some thin tomatoes, they're watery, so I don't use a lot of them. And then for the toppings, I use queso quesadilla or cheddar cheese. I use queso fresco or sour cream to top them. And then I like to use salsa or hot sauce as a topping. So for the directions, first, it's really simple. It's a pancake recipe. You mix all the dry ingredients, then you mix up and add in all of the wet ingredients. Don't overmix, like, just get it quickly incorporated and stop. That's like where if you're working with little ones, stop, no more mixing, we're good. Let the batter sit for 10 minutes. So it's especially important with cornmeal because you want the corn flour to be able to absorb the moisture and soften before you cook them. Cook them on a hot griddle that's lightly buttered. And then before you flip them, you just add whatever veggie and cheese toppings you want. You can see in the picture how they kind of, like especially with the cheese, it makes like a yummy, like crispy cheese crust on the surface, and give them a flip. And they're done when they've, they're ready to flip when you see the little bubbles on the first side. And then, once they've flipped, they're done once they kind of puff up and are nice and hot and fluffy. And then, yeah, like I mentioned, top them with whatever you like. And again, like with the little ones, with our kids, this gives them like so much more freedom to play with their food in ways that we want to encourage them to play with their food, not in ways that are disruptive and messy and, at the dinner hour, we don't really have time for. So giving them some options of different things that they can top their pancakes with at dinner time is just a really fun way to get them excited to try some new things and have some autonomy in ways that are, as a parent, a little bit more tolerable in the kitchen at dinner time when you're trying to wrap up the day, especially on a weeknight. So that is the recipe I'd have to share. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts or ideas or any similar recipes that this makes them think of that we'd like to share with the group real fast. Cool. All right, well, with that, we can move to wrap up. Let me share with you all. First, I'd like to share the flyer of our garden chat series, just to go over all of the dates that we have coming up. Hold on 1 second, please. It's just taking a minute to pull it up. All right, let's see if this works. All right. So thank you all for coming today. The next things that are coming up for this series are grow bag distribution. So if you peek over here, you can see I've got some of my own grow bags set up. This one is with green onions. This one has some kale in it. Over here, that one has some potatoes that are just starting to sprout. So they're really versatile grow bags. I keep them outside. You can also keep them in a sunny window, although they're a little bit more challenging to grow in the low light environments, especially for veggies, but really versatile growing tools. So we'll be sharing those out with families. Please spread the word, invite your friends. We're going to be doing a distribution first this upcoming Wednesday, May 20th. Yeah, a week from yesterday, May 25th, from 5 to 7 p.m. at the Growing Garden site, 1630 Hawthorne. It's really easy to access from that address. You'll pull right into the parking lot and you'll see us. We'll have a grow bag and soil and seeds and a packet with an invitation to all of these series and sessions for anybody to come. And then we're going to have a second distribution. We were initially planning for this Saturday, but avoiding the cold weather and snow. And so we're going to do it next Saturday instead, May 28th. That'll be 8 to 1 the entire time that the Longmont Farmers Market is open. And we have the address here as well, 9595 Nelson Road. Really looking forward to seeing all the folks come out and grab some garden kits. And then we have follow-up sessions. So June 2nd, June 16th, June 30th, we're gonna continue to have these chats. We're gonna talk about growing with the grow bags and just how to grow our gardens. Then we're gonna have a session specifically on biodiversity and garden health that we're gonna be working with some of our partners to present some ways that we can support pollinator health and beneficial insects and the great biodiversity that happens in the garden. And our next session is going to be on cooking and eating. We're going to feature recipes. If you all have recipes that you would like to share, we would love to feature some of those recipes just really simply with the group. So we'll be following up to recruit some people to share some recipes. And then our last session virtually is going to be troubleshooting a garden questions and kind of Q&A session with CSU Master Gardeners. And then our last session on July 26th will be in person at the Growing Gardens Farm in Longmont, where we can go and tour their site and see all the great stuff that they have going on there. So please, again, feel free to share the flyer. If you need a copy of it, let me know, just give me a holler. I'll put my email address in the chat and I will follow up with the flyer. You can share it with whoever you like. And then the last thing I just wanted to share is really a question, especially for you, Carla, and our guest who's here with us on the phone, is, this hour is a little bit early in the day, 4:30 to 5:30. We wanted to kind of make sure we were not intruding too much on the evening dinner time hours, but wanted to know if we pushed it back an hour to 5:30 to 6:30, if you think that might support more families being able to join. It might be easier to get some more folks on the call. And if that time would still work for you, knowing that this time worked for you today, would that hour later work for you?
Yeah, definitely for me, I'm a little bit more flexible, but I know that families are picking kids up from school or after school programs. Dinner time is a big thing. So really whatever would work for everybody else. Like, I'm very flexible and I know that families have things to do. So I hope that if pushing it back would mean more people, then yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Thanks for that feedback. And I don't know if our guest on the phone, if you're able to unmute and share, but feel free to type in the chat as well.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Hey, yeah, I'm Brian, by the way. Sorry, I was walking my dog and it was super windy out. So real quick, I'm the food program director at the Acorn school in Boulder. And for me, this time works just fine. But 5:30 to 6:30 would work for me as well. I would just need to leave like right at 6:30 because I have a commitment every week at 7 o'clock. Great.
That's really great to know. So, thanks so much, Brian. And I'm glad you were able to join today.
Yeah. Sorry I wasn't contributing earlier. It was super windy outside, and when I get home from work, I go on a long walk with my dog. So, but I was listening to everything you guys had to say. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'm so glad you were able to join on a walk and stay safe in the wind and all of that. So yeah. Cool. Well, thank you all for joining. I so appreciate it. Alicia, Alicia, thank you so much for all of the wonderful composting knowledge. We shared your links in the chat, and I hope folks are able to follow up with you and connect to the great resources EcoCycle has to offer. And looking forward to seeing you all out at the distributions coming up next week and in 2 weeks for our next chat.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.